everyone, it's Charles again. Thanks for coming back to this week's How to Invest Real Estate in Toronto. So last week we wrapped up our conversation regarding 2-unit conversions. These are a great, strategy for everyday, working people like me and or you. If you have a single family and you don't necessarily want to go through like a severance process or do a new build, you can easily add a second unit in your basement, which is very popular. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about multifamilies. Okay, we're going to talk about what I mean by multifamilies and the pros and cons, and I'll give you my conclusion on it. So what are multifamilies? So we're not talking about 1 to 4 units here, right? Those are categorized as small rental properties. What we're talking about this week is 5 or more units. These are large multifamily properties, and in the lending terms, they're categorized as commercial residential, right? So basically, we're buying the entire apartment buildings. Okay, let's get into the pros. So the first pro is that financing is less on personal, but rather the performance of the building. Financing is less personal, but on the performance of the building. What I mean by that is, so financing is for commercial residential is more business-like, right? Personal income of borrower generally does not significantly have a big factor, but you will need at least 25% of your net worth, but generally your income is not a big factor. So that means you're able to borrow on these buildings if the building itself is performing well and it's a sound business, even though your income might not be where it's at. If you were to qualify for this type of or this amount, if it was like a residential building. Okay, each multi-unit residential property must cash flow on its own, right? That's the key. It's not a profitable business if you're losing every month, right? And the banks will need to look for that, right? And your credit never really maxes out. If you can qualify for each building, you can basically continue on, right? So how value is determined, that's another pros, right? So in the multifamily world, there's a term called cap rate that a lot of people use to determine the value of the property. And the cap rate is very simple. It's basically your net operating income divided by the property value. Your net operating income is your total income divided by operating expense. So for example, if the building cost $1 million, right, to purchase, and your net operating income is 60,000, this is always in a year, then your cap rate is 6%, right? So when analyzing the economics of a marketplace in general, a downtrend in cap rates over time means that the property prices are increasing. Demand is strong and the market is doing well. So going back in time and analyzing the historical cap rate is a good way to understand where the market has been and where it could be going, right? Tips. Before going on deeper dive, let's say you saw a multifamily on MLS or you have a private deal, make sure you review the pro forma. Pro forma is basically the same thing for income and expense sheet, right? And make sure the income is not on potential but the actual, right? A lot of realtors do that to make the cap rate look better, right? But that's the gap you have for an investor. That's where you will make the money, right? So we're looking for underperforming buildings, right? So if you can increase the income or decrease the expense, then we can increase the property value over time, right? So there's something in the multi-unit investing world which is called the multiplier effect, which means every dollar you increase in net operating income, around $16 will increase in value. That's a great strategy, right? So a lot of investors, what they do is they buy maybe older apartment buildings, and as you turn over the existing tenants, you are renovating them. Maybe you're creating additional bedrooms, and you're getting a new tenant who's going to pay you market rent. That way, gradually over time, your building value is going to increase tremendously. Another pro is that it's a diversified income. So for a single family rental, if the tenant leaves, then 100% of your income is gone. But for multi-unit, let's say you had 10 units, even if one tenant leaves, you still have 9 other tenants paying you. So that's another way why multifamily is a great investment. So let's talk about some of the cons. Okay, definitely more money spent on due diligence. When you're buying a multifamily buildings, you have to do environmental assessment, and you need to do in-depth mechanical, heating, and air conditioning system, also plumbing and electrical. All these things, basically you're adding a zero to everything you're doing, right? So make sure you have the funds for that, right? Lower tenant profile, faster turnover, right? So even though there are more tenants, the quality of each tenant in these apartment buildings are generally lower tenant profile than what you will get in a single family or a duplex, right? They will generally not become a family. It will be like a single person or like an elderly. So expect that, right? And generally, when you get into multi-unit investing, you're looking at long term, even longer than single family. You're looking at least 10 years, right? Because it takes time to get tenants out. It takes time to renovate each unit, right? And also, it's not a very liquid investment, right? To sell these, the general, you and I are not looking for, multi-units all the time, right? So you can only sell to an investor, right? Not a family looking to live. And it takes longer time to stabilize, right? So again, you buy them, you slowly do the tenant turnover, you slowly renovate each unit. So it takes time before you get to the optimum performance level of this asset, right? Okay, so in conclusion, right, I would say, if you're just starting out, start with singles, duplex, or triplex. And once you've made your portfolio, once you have enough wealth, and once you've paid down the mortgage and your loan to value is great, and you have the wealth and an extra net worth, then I would maybe start to liquidate some of the single families and duplex, and then put them into multi-unit apartment buildings. It's a great way to park your money, but it is definitely long term. Because it's kind of a hedge against the market, right? Because you can increase your income and then the value goes up. You have more control, in my opinion, right? And also, it's economy of scale. Think about it. Like if you're an average investor and you have, let's say, 3 properties in Hamilton, and you bought like 2 more in Barrie, and then you bought maybe 2 more in Niagara. Oh my God, you're running so many cities. And if you can just somehow consolidate all that into one roof, and you have one boiler, you have one heater, you have one air conditioning, one electrical panel, it makes things so much easier, right? Okay, so that's that for multi-unit investing. If you like what you're seeing, please go to my website in the link below, download your free deal analyzer. That's the analyzer I use to run the numbers for every deal that I come across. And if you can like and subscribe, that would be great. See you next week.